Okay, just to let everyone know, we're just waiting for two people, one person to come back to do minutes, and perhaps Mr. Stewart will be here. So even though we're all early, and that's great on a nice day, we'll just wait a little bit longer and see what happens. Okay. Okay, if you can just send him an email then, and just say if he can make it down, that'd be great. And yeah, it'd be neat if he could be good or great if he could be here. And we'll just move into the agenda then. And I'll give you a second if you can do that quick. And then we'll move into the agenda. Committee members, as presented, I'll call the meeting to order. Noted the declaration of conflict and the agenda to be adopted in front of us with 1 minute and 2 business items. Councillor Seegers, Councillor Lutz, all in favor? Thank you. Then let's go to 5.1, minutes of the Public Works, Parks and Environment Committee meeting. And this was from August 22nd. Thank you. Councillor Lutz moving receipt. Councillor Seegers seconding of receipt. All in favor of receipt. Any questions and or business arising from those minutes? Councillor Seegers.
Thank you. Bottom of page 3.
Yes.
Indicates that we were hoping staff could work with the SCRD staff collaboratively on the solid waste request for proposal. I'm wondering how that's going.
So, Mr. Bandera, that's probably for you, if you can answer that.
It's not under my work, but we can ask from Paul Appel.
So say that last part again, sorry?
Paul Appel.
Oh, Paul Appelt.
Yeah.
He would be the one that knows on that one?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So obviously then you'll have to get back to us on that one.
Sure.
Figure out a way to answer the committee's questions. I'm sure we'd all like to know because it was posed, but also somehow figure out how to get the question answered into the minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
Any other business arising from those minutes? Looking around at committee. Okay, thanks, committee. Seeing none, let's then move on to 7.1. Engineering and Operations Services Overview and Activity Report for the last number of days. Thank you. Councillor Lutz, I'm looking to you. You've been doing that. Thank you. All in favor of receipt? Okay, great. Any questions on the information presented herein?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for the estimated start date, estimated completion date, and percentage. I appreciate that. That helps me. As I look through the entire report, it seems to me that we're going to have a number of projects that are going to be a carry forward into next year, much as I anticipated. We're biting off way more capital projects than what we can get done in a year. I count them up as 13 that are going to be carried forward. And I understand why some of them are being carried forward because they're large projects. But we continue to try and box away above our weight class, okay? And that's a real problem. People are asking me about these capital projects and asking me, well, is it going to get done? And now I have to tell them, yeah, it's going to get done next year. And some of these projects have been on the books for several years now. And I don't know how to convince people that this is not a smart way to do business, but it certainly is not a smart way to do the business. I've got some other questions, but if others want to chime in, feel free.
That's a familiar comment that you've made the last couple of years, Councillor Wright. Is there particular ones that people are asking you about and saying, I really am expecting that, I'm looking forward to that, community wants it?
Well, Trail Avenue is one, okay.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, as you go down through the list, we can all pick them off. Mm-hmm. Okay, well, what's happening with the RCMP station? Okay, what's happening? And the list just goes on and on. Mm-hmm. And I have some other questions about the chemical storage area, but I'll let others speak to and
You mean the chemical storage, you mean 7.2?
Sorry?
You mean 7.2, item 7.2? Is
No.
that what you're referring to?
No.
Oh, okay, because it's coming up.
I'm on page 11, and it says chemical storage area design,
Oh, okay.
20% complete, finished in November.
Okay, because it's coming, you're going to ask that maybe, and you'll talk about it as well, because it is 7-2 as well.
I understand that.
Okay. Trail Avenue, we've discussed. If you want to update, I mean, that's a pretty important project. It's a bit large arterial for Seashelt, and if you want to provide an update, that would be helpful. Because there has been some snags. We've heard about them with other issues as well.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As you know that the council directs staff to go review the current design and any other options to reduce the cost. And the consultant and the district, we did that one. And the consultant's doing the more detail, how much the cost we can reduce, the second option. And we had the meeting with track the committee members to how it's impact the cycling group. So then now we are working on that. But the SMT senior management team decided to bring the council report with the next new council. So we are working on that.
Okay. Councillor Seegers, and I guess Councillor Wright, do you want to continue with that? Councillor Wright then? Councillor Seegers is deferring to you. Do you want, okay. So somebody needs to step up, okay?
I'd like to
Seegers?
ask Councillor Wright how he would have staff deal with projects that actually go over multiple years. Do we not do those projects, or how do we deal with them?
Oh, we want to play politics today, do we? Okay. There are certain projects, and if you listen to what I said, there are projects that do have to carry over from year to year. Those I understand. Let's talk about the Trail Avenue project. I believe this is the project that came to council asking us for a special dispensation, okay, to approve it ahead of the budget and the capital budgets within the budget. That this was going to go ahead and it was going to happen this year. So here we are sitting in the fall, and nothing's happened with this project except that we've got the design done. We're at the same stage we were back in January and February. There's a lesson to be learned here. When you trot out a Mercedes, well, you better have the money to pay for the Mercedes. If you've only got Chevrolet money, start looking at Chevrolet.
So if you have additional questions on Councillor Seegers, we've heard Councillor Wright's point about making sure that we can do this work and make sure that we can do it within a affordable budget.
I understand, and we did get cost estimates initially, which is what staff brought to us. And then when we actually refined those, it came back at higher. And we're finding that with all of the projects that we do, that the amount that it costs is coming in higher, which means our staff have to go back to the drawing board and rework the projects, which delays them. So I understand that. Mm-hmm. Okay, so I have questions in here.
Okay.
On page 9, it talks about the Stage 2 Liquid Waste Management Plan update and the Selma Park and Davis Bay Sewer Functional Plan. And I noticed that they both were awarded to KWL. So I'm wondering if those two projects were put to out to RFP, or were they sole sourced?
We did RFP, but only one consultant responded. Okay. And then we evaluated the consultant, and their qualifications is not good. So then the KWL, working with some other development, so they are doing the work on that area. Then we negotiated with them to get the Davis Bay Sewer Functional Plan. And also the same company in 1990s, they did the sewer feasibility study to bring the sewer to Wilson Creek Plaza, that area. So we got the RFP and is within the budget, and they know the scope of work, and we award the contract to them to start the work.
Okay. And
just to update, they revised the schedule. The public engagement meeting, including a CCL Indian government grant, in January 16th. Tentatively, we fixed that one. And the final report by February 15th. And once they complete the final one, we accept it, then we'll bring that to the council, forward to council, the new council on that.
Perfect. All right, page 10. Talks about the Bailey Row sidewalk. And it's going to be done in conjunction with the Derby Road upgrade off-site work. When do we anticipate that Cowrie will be open to Derby? Is there a timeline on that yet?
Currently, I think you guys have seen that they're doing the curbing inside the Derby Road. And I think they schedule middle of October to work on Derby down. So at the same time, we will do this work with the same contractor.
Good job.
So you're saying that with it soon after that,
By end of this year, yes.
the
That
alternative route to West Sechelt could be open.
could be opened with the permit because they're trying to pave the road early November.
Yeah.
If the temperature is good, yes, then it will open this Christmas.
Yeah.
Nice.
Good. It's interesting. That was something we talked about in 2007 and 8.
Yes.
So it's
You
good.
have
So
other
time.
items?
So
Okay.
time tends to take care of it. So it's good to see finally. Councillor Seegers.
Yes, page 10. Bylaw 430 review and replacement. So the letter of award is going to be issued. So what I'm wondering is, what kind of input and direction did we provide to the applicant? And where did we get, did we get public input, development community input? I also noticed in the ICSP, which is in the next agenda package, I believe, it's talking about bylaw 430. So I'm wondering, was all that information brought together? Is all of that provided to whoever the applicant is so that we make sure that we include the input from the community?
Yes, thank you. So just to update on that too, we issued the letter of award yesterday for ISL to proceed the work. And that include stakeholder meetings, developers meeting, all group interested, the public, everyone's, we have the meetings on that.
Okay, good. Thank you. Page 13. Under administration, there was a message or a note about the Elder College presentations. I wanted to thank Angela, Sanat, Perry, John, and Julie for the work that they did, the presentation. It was very well received. Obviously, you guys had all prepped ahead of time and practiced it, so it was good. Thank you very much for doing that. And then I have page 15. This is on Dusty Road, Sailor's Soils. Talks about Sailor's Soils removing biosolids and reeds from the lagoon. Now, this has been on this for a number of months. What's the status of this?
With the Sailor Soils, they've done their part. They removed compost, I guess, for lack of better words right now. The weeds problem was not created by them. We had a weeds problem in there ourselves. That's been there because the aeration pond is very old. It's not working to full potential. It's not in the system. And at times I've had heavy equipment up there, our own excavator, pulling stuff out. So that part, but the really only new part here, which is right, is the line. The aeration pond has an overflow line, which before people that used to work here were pumping it over. Myself and Doug Kopp, we just went up there and got that sucked out. So there's no need for panic of any sort up there now. So with the Sailor soil and the weeds and that, there's no issue there right now.
So that's been on our list for probably 3 months. Has that been an ongoing issue for 3 months, or was it dealt with right away when it first happened?
It wasn't dealt with immediately. It took a little bit of time, not a great deal of time. We had different people working here at that time, and then it was taken care of. It wasn't something they jumped on right away, but it was taken care of. And the reference with removing biosalts and that from the aeration tank, that shouldn't be on this paper right now.
Okay, thank you very much. That's all my questions.
Thank you. Any questions, Councillor Wright?
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. On the same subject, it says that we've got a completion date of October. Is that valid?
Sorry, Councillor Wright, the completion date of,
It says October.
yes.
Is that valid?
Yes, that'll be valid for this. It's going to be an ongoing problem until that system up there is totally gone. like the weeds and what I'm talking about, because it is human waste. Weeds and grass grow in human waste really good.
Yeah, I guess my difficulty is, and I heard what you said about the biosolids should be removed, but when I get a report that says Salish Soils is removing the biosolids, it's supposed to be complete by October, and it's only 50% complete, and I know October starts in a couple of days. Yes,
Yeah,
sir,
they remove what we asked them to remove.
okay, so they've done their portion, so
Yes, they
now it's our own maintenance.
It's our own maintenance, yes.
Okay, thank you, that helps, thanks.
Any other questions from over here? So, you're good? Okay, great. I want to ask a question just to Parks because we have some information that's in here regarding beach accesses and the work that's been done and all the beach access has been open. One of the things, Perry, that I hear is beach accesses that people are utilizing near people's property, and that's understandable. That's why we have them, but that they're staying up late at night out there partying and things like that, and loudness and not cleaning up after themselves. Some beach accesses and/or parks have, hour limits and things like that and controls over that. Is that something that you're aware of and we've ever considered for some of our beach accesses, that people aren't following what would be considered respectful and regular hours of use?
No, I haven't heard that actually.
Oh, okay.
It's been years since I've had a complaint about anybody causing a lot of noise at a particular beach access. Haven't heard from that individual for at least 4 or 5 years. So occasionally we do find some debris down at Mission Point Park. It seems to be a popular access where people have parties. But we're not getting a whole lot of complaints. So I'm not sure if they're coming directly to you, and they should put in service requests to us. There is one beach access at Snicket Park that does have a dusk to dawn sign on it. And, it would be quite an expense to add a bunch of signs to 55 other beach accesses unless it was actually required. So at this point, I don't have any plans to do anything like that.
Okay, yeah, thank you. I'm not, I would never suggest that we hit a small fly with a large mallet. I was just referring to the odd troublesome spot or whatever that we may need to put up signage like we do in some cases to just remind people that there's other people around and that they may need to be more respectful. But that could be one example and I just wondered if it was something we've done, and Snicket we've obviously done because it's in the downtown core, and whether it's something we've done, whether it's part of policy or what our reactions are.
All our signs at every beach access, we have a sign that identifies the name and address of the access and tells people that if they have any concerns or see any damage, to give the district of Sechelt a call.
Yes.
So considering I haven't received a lot of complaints, I don't think it's a big issue.
Okay.
But we do, in our beach access website and in our brochures, we do ask people to respect the neighbor's privacy as well.
Okay.
So whether we want to add that to signage at some point, we'll just see if, as you say, if it becomes a bigger problem.
Yeah, thanks for being aware of what you've heard in the past and what we could do and what we have done in one case. It's just good that we have some tools to remind people where they're living and where they're hanging out. So thanks, Barry, for that. Any other questions then, if I've given people some time to have any? If we don't have any questions on 7.1, what I will then do is move to 7.2, looking at committee. No more questions on 7.1. Thanks, committee, for all those good questions. To get staff updates and more information. Let's move on to 7.2, chemical storage facility design. Thank you. Second, all in favor of receipt. Thank you. And did you want to add anything more to this? I'm assuming that, it would be, so John, it says director of engineering and operations, but do you want to speak to this?
Yes, it was done by our director. We had some consultation with him. He was picking our brain for stuff, and we're trying to come up with variable ideas. I was just reading the paper that came in today, and I think when the director gets back from holidays, I'll send off an email to him, and if there's any questions or anything that you people have, I'll make sure he answers, because I don't think myself or Sanath have the availability of info to answer any of your questions on that today.
Okay, thanks. Councillor Seegers.
I have one question you may be able to answer. Bottom of page 19. When I read those last 3 paragraphs, it almost seems to indicate that we're looking at 2 CCANs. One for a workshop and one for a maintenance and spare parts shop.
I know in a conversation with the director, we were at the CCAN, we were looking at the CCAN itself for a workshop, being heated and electrical and everything in it, and then having the small version CCAN, which would be their spare parts for pumps, spare pumps and stuff like that. Not another bigger CCAN, a smaller version, more or less of a shed type size CCAN to store pumps and spare parts.
So we are looking at 2, just different sizes.
Different sizes, yes.
Okay, that's what I anticipated from this, but it wasn't really clear in what it said. And then, you probably wouldn't be able to answer this. Well, maybe you will. Page 20. It says, halfway through the first paragraph, it says, although the district is using more chemicals than anticipated. Why are we using more chemicals than anticipated? Do we know?
I'm just trying to see where anticipated that we're using more chemicals.
That's what it says. Although the district is using more chemicals than anticipated. Maybe we could send that one off
And
to
that's, no,
Darwin too.
since you brought that up, I've implemented quite a few changes over there in the last few weeks. I think personally our chemical usage and cost, with finance getting us better cost at purchasing, and with the changes I've implemented over there, is that I can see our chemicals actually start to decline a little bit. Went through the history of the WRC from start to where we're at now. Our usage at the start was quite low compared to what it is now. And I think there was changes that were implemented over there by other people that created this. We have 4 FBRs. We should only have 3 online. So what we've done, myself with Doug Kopp and Christine Miller, is that we've taken the 4th FBR offline. We don't need it. We lowered it. We're keeping it, the bugs alive in it every now and then with a fresh injection, but it's not online. Our ultrafiltration, we made some changes in that. Our turbidity was very high, very unacceptable. It was in the 30s and 40s. Our turbidity right now is down to 7 or 8. We can see a little reduction in our chemical usage. And had a meeting with Paul Nash, and he brought some really good information to the table about switching different types of chemicals, which will help us with more decrease. So we're basically, I've implemented right now, let's swing the plant back to what it was. And that's not an overnight project. So that's, I think with finance and WRC and stuff, it's not something we can look at in a month and say, oh, it's great. It's going to be a period of time where we'll hopefully see that reduction.
Okay, that'd be nice to see. All right, thank you.
Councillor Wright.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. And I understand that you've got potentially some savings in the chemicals, and that is going to be used to offset some of the cost. If there is not adequate savings, are we okay with taking the money from someplace else in the budget?
Mr. Chairman, through to Councillor Wright. Yes, I'm quite comfortable that we can find this money within the existing budget. Okay. The chemicals will likely be the place, but I think in the whole water resort or the sewer budget as a whole can absorb this cost.
Okay. Another a different question. If we have a spill or we have somebody who mixes the chemicals or somehow they get mixed, what are the liabilities that we're up against?
The plant is designed and built. If there's a chemical malfunction, all of the drainage systems and everything that are built within that it is totally self-contained. It does not go out to a storm sewer or to a sewer line. It's self-contained and goes back into the treatment itself. So that's not going to hurt the environment. It's held within itself and starts retreating itself. I mean, there'll be an abundance of one type of chemical which will offset the chart. Stuff where we have chemicals that can create a chain reaction, such as fires, explosions. The explosive side of it is very low. I know that because that's my background. And it's our liabilities and stuff, you know, accidents do happen, but I think the crew over there, if you come and watch them when they're moving these massive chemical tanks around, they're very safe and they work very well around it. So specifically your question is, if something goes wrong, what are our liabilities? I think Doug could answer that.
Well, certainly if it went external to the plant itself, there could be potential liabilities. I mean, that's what MIA is for. We have a $50 million policy, so worst case scenario is there for the catastrophic event. I can say that the fire department is certainly aware of the chemicals that we have down there, and they have plans in place from a hazmat perspective to deal with any emergencies if there happen to be a fire or other incident in there. They're trained and know what to expect when they get there. So.
I guess I wasn't so concerned about the dollar costs or the financial liabilities. I was more concerned about the employees who are working there and what situation we may be putting them in that is dangerous if that should happen.
They all have the safety courses. Any employee for the district of Sechelt can get hurt or killed. Public Works, they're running the flail mower, the graders, excavators. You know, over there, they're trained in that field. They have the courses in that field. Okay. So it's the same as Public Works. They're trained on those machines and the safety aspect of it.
Thank you.
Yeah, the discussion's a little bit troubling to me because it's in the middle of town, and if there's the spillage that you're concerned about or mentioned, there's a marsh nearby, so there's lots of concerns with where it is. Councillor Wright.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and that starts to be some of my concern.
Yeah.
And as I look at the recommendation in terms of the options and having those chemicals stored in the same building, which is the preferred option, I start to get a real nervous that I've got chemicals that are a potential danger to our employees and possibly other things to the environment, to the marsh, and so on. Yeah. And so I start wondering if option one then is the best option that we should be thinking about.
Okay.
And I'm just not convinced that option one is the best choice. I understand option two is much more expensive, but I suspect that it's expensive for a reason.
Yeah. Yes. Those are all good concerns, and as I reiterated, where it's located, the marsh, and what we've been finding with this plant is the costs are unpredictable, and this could be an additional cost to it once again. Councillor Wright, did you have any more?
Well, the reality is it wasn't taken into consideration when they built the building, and that's what, you know, and now it's coming back to haunt us. Okay, we put this building where it is. We're not going to move the building. All we can do now is make it work to optimum capacity and pay for it. But the side benefits to that is we're trying to figure out where an operations center is going to go, and that price tag is $5.6 million, and we know that's not. We know from our construction costs that's going to come in much higher than that. And now we've got a chemical storage issue, and you know this. It starts to you start to wonder what the decision was and how wise it was, at the time. So it gives me, I see some big expenses coming for us as a result of something that happened previously, and that's it. And that's my concern. And the safety issue is there. I understand people are trained I also know that things happen.
Yeah.
And when you start dealing with chemicals, I don't like the things that potentially could happen. They give me real concern. Thank you.
Yeah, there's some risk, as I've mentioned, in the middle of town, and you know, at this point, dealing with some of the costs. It's in a lot of cases it's about mitigation and how we best can manage it. Although I always wonder how big our sewer funds have to become to cover some of these concerns. Councillor Seegers.
Two things. Comment about the chemicals. I think that's why it was required that we have a level 4 sewer treatment person. What I don't know what the certification, level 4 something, right? Level 4 wastewater running the facility, so that they're very much aware of that. Also, all the other staff have to. I think they're all at least level 1, and some are moving towards their level 2. So 2 and 3. Okay, so they've got the training in that, because these chemicals are common in treating wastewater. So it's not unique to this facility. Given that we don't have our Director of Engineering and Operations here, I'd actually like to defer this, because I think we have some questions around the options. I'd like to defer the voting on this one back and have it come back to the next meeting so we can discuss it more.
So obviously there's no discussion, but a vote on the deferment.
Perfect.
Yeah. Okay, I'll put the vote out to committee. All in favor of deferment? Opposed? Okay, so let's continue asking some more questions on this issue. Yeah, I was just letting the committee, but I'm going to go with the committee on that one to continue the discussion. And yes, yeah. Councillor Wright.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Normally, I would vote to defer this one, but I happen to know that if we happen to approve this, it's committee level. It comes to council, and we can pull it out at the council level. And at least we get to deal with it in 2 weeks' time rather than it being dealt with a month from now in committee and then another 6 weeks or so down the road at council level. So that was the reason I voted against deferment, just so that we're aware of that. I think that he will need to answer some questions at council meeting, that's for sure, because there's a lot of, I think there's some concern about what's happening and what the options are.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Seegers, your hand was up, or Councillor Lutz then? Yeah. Sure.
Thank you. I too voted against deferment. I'm concerned that WCB has let us know quite some time ago that we needed to do something about this chemical storage, and I think delaying it further is the wrong thing. We need to make a decision of a suggestion or a recommendation to council and keep this moving forward.
Okay, Councillor Lutz, is that your comments? Okay, thank you. Councillor Seegers?
Thank you. Do we know when the Director of Engineering and Operations will be back?
Will he be back in time for council is what I think Councillor Seegers is asking. Okay. Okay. So just after council? Okay. Councillor Wright?
And thank you, Mr. Chair. And the reality of this is that this is for the design. This is this is not for the construction, but the construction of this is not going to happen this year. So I think we do need to have some discussion about which option we think should be incorporated into the design and which one we want to design for, because they're quite, I think the options are quite different. So I think that if we can give staff some direction in terms of the options that we believe they should look at and what priority we think those options are, which is the preferred one, then they can at least go ahead and start the design work. Holding it up, as Councillor Lutz said, is could get us into some difficulty with WorkSafe BC.
Okay, so we have a motion in front of us and its proposal to move forward, obviously, if it's voted for, but the options that you're referring to, Councillor Wright, when would that come?
Well, Mr. Chair, I think we need to give the administration some sense of what we think our options are today.
Yes?
I mean, we've got a dollar value for design.
Yeah.
What's our preferred option. Do we want the chemicals located in the existing building, or do we want them located in a different building? And that's where we are with that. And otherwise, we're going to have, if we just go ahead and they do option one as a design, and that's not the option that we choose, then we've got the wrong design. And now we're back into the operations center where we got the wrong design and a big budget, and the list goes on.
Okay.
Trail Avenue, we got the wrong design and a big budget and can't afford them.
Okay, so we have one that's here that's been received. We voted on that. We have a number 2. Will we have a number 3, or will we have number 2 with some amendments made and voted on that includes the option? I'm asking committee how they want to proceed. Councillor Lutz,
I'll move option 2.
to get that done. Second. Any further discussion on option 2? Councillor Seegers.
Thank you. So this is doing a design for the storage area within the Water Resource Center. So it is doing a design for option 1.
Number 2 is a new building.
No, within the Water Resource Center is what number 2 says. For the
So-
design of a chemical storage area within the Water Resource Center, which is option 1
it says
in the
within.
report.
Does say within. So just some clarification from staff on that to make sure we have exactly what we're voting for in front of us. Mr. Stewart, just some clarification, and then we'll come back to Councillor Wright on this issue.
Certainly, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So a few things. One, just to sort of put some context around the chemicals, I actually did have some discussions with the Director of Engineering about this. His feeling is certainly that the chemicals should be located inside the facility. The more you move them around, that's when you're taking more risk. So to have them delivered to the facility and held within the facility would be his preferred option. The real issue here is the fact that we have the staff work area and the chemical facility storage in the same location. So his preferred option would be to find a place for the staff, a workshop for them to work outside of the facility and keep the chemicals inside and retrofit the inside of the facility to better handle the storage of the chemicals. And also just on what is being proposed here, I didn't realize that the recommendation said within. The total budget here that's being proposed is actually to do a cost estimate of all 3 options. The thought was, I think, that if through the discussion it was felt that option number 2 was locating this facility outside, we could reduce the cost of the design because we wouldn't go there. But from the sounds that the committee would like, or like the consultant to propose and cost out all 3 options for consideration, which is held within the $50,000 budget or $47,500 budget that's being proposed.
Yeah. Okay. Be interesting to see what the final cost is, additional cost other than this to then provide that safeguard. Councillor Seegers.
Thank you. If I read this report, it actually indicates that option 3 is off the table because it would not work due to lack of sufficient area in the shop. Option 2, as has been indicated, is much more expensive because the structure has to be built outside, heated continuously, then there has to be security, lighting, etc. So my reading of this is that if we move number 2 forward, we are actually going to be looking at only the design of the chemical storage area within the Water Resource Center. We will not be looking at any kind of design for any other option. And in the report, my read of it is that given the amount of money we put aside, we actually have sufficient funds to also then do the CCANs. So it's a complete package with option 1.
Is that what committee understands the number 2 to include and or focus on option 1? There's some concerns with this committee members. I've heard them that storing these chemicals in the building and that maybe needs to be studied some more with our workers is something we should consider. So I'm looking to committee and or staff. We don't necessarily, I mean, this can be changed when it goes to council in order to change this recommendation, and we may want to bring it up and then make changes to it. But if the understanding and the direction is that we look at, clearly consider something within the building when we're uncomfortable with that, we should discuss that. Councillor Wright.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. I thought I heard the Director of Finance just say that this funding was a design for all 3 options. Is that correct? So option 3 is not off the table because we're going to get a design for it. And so are the other two. They're on the table as well. Is that correct?
Yes, the RFP that went out and the proposal that came in was to do all three options. The Director of Engineering thought perhaps he could spend less than the $47,500 if he only looked at one or two of those options. But if the will of the committee is to have options 1 and 2 done, that can certainly be done within the budget and proposal that was given to us.
Okay, is committee comfortable with that? We have number 2 in front of us, and then we'll vote on that if committee is comfortable. And then I just want to say a couple words before we move on to further questions on this. Councillor Seegers.
Thank you. It sounds like somebody would like to make an amendment to recommendation number 2 that's on the floor then.
Yes, is that Councillor Lutz?
Certainly.
Okay.
That we request estimates for all 3 options.
That the proposal from the Brookside MCI be accepted in the amount of 47 plus PST totaling 49,875 for the design of a chemical storage area within the WRC, and that, is that what that is? And that estimates be brought forward for all 3 options?
To council. Yeah.
Okay, that's being proposed, that's seconded? That's second. Any discussion on that then? Yes?
First of all, I have concerns about the wording, and then in the report, option 3 indicates that it will not work due to lack of sufficient area in the shop to create a room within a room. So if it won't work, then I don't see why we should spend money in looking at option 3. I would look at option 1 and 2 only.
Okay, any other thoughts from the 2 committee members that have been speaking on this subject? Councillor Lutz, Councillor Wright, we have an amendment in front of us, then to go back to number 2. Any other thoughts? Councillor Lutz, your light is on?
Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, okay. Any other thoughts? None? Okay, all in favor of the amendment as presented? Okay. Okay, so as amended, let's go back to number 2 then, as amended.
Could I hear that, please?
Pardon?
Could we hear the motion?
Sure.
That's on the floor?
Yeah. Okay, so that was passed, the amendment, you heard it. Well, Councillor Seegers, now we know that that was passed, so we're going to the original as amended.
Yes,
Councillor
so,
Seegers?
so we're asking for a design for a chemical storage area within the Water Resource Center and cost estimates for all options. What about design? Are we looking for designs for all of them? Are we looking just costs of them? What do we, I don't understand that the motion is actually clear to staff to actually direct them as to what we want.
Okay, so I understand what you're saying. It was voted upon, so we're just going to move to the original motion. Is the information that was provided to staff clear on this motion? Mr. Stewart?
Yes, Mr. Chairman,
Yeah.
I think it is. We can certainly
Okay.
pass that along to the director of what the committee is
What the
asking
motion is.
for.
Okay, thank you.
We will include
Okay.
design and costs.
Okay, we need to make sure it's clear. Let's go back to number 2 then. And I believe, just a revision, it was, because it's been some time ago, it was introduced by 2 people already, I believe, so that I don't have to go back there. So we'll just put the motion on the table. Was it introduced? Yes, correct. Okay, we have the motion as amended now on the table. Any further thought on that motion? All in favor? And opposed? Councillor Seegers.
Please record it.
Yes. Councillor Seegers asked for recording, and thanks committee for a really good discussion on that. It's disappointing that we're spending even more money just to talk about a design for something maybe should have been in the original design. I would ask you, Mr. Stewart, when you say that the money's there, where's it coming from when you say that?
It was money that was budgeted for the purchase of chemicals that won't be required. So it's sewer levy money received this year that would not be required for the anticipated budget. And we can create a new project and transfer the money to this.
Okay, explain. It won't be required for chemicals because why?
Because with the RFP, we were able to reduce our cost of chemicals
Okay.
significantly for the year. So, and that just occurred during the year. So the budget was basically higher than it needs to be, so there
Okay.
will be unspent funds that would have otherwise gone to surplus.
Okay, so what you're saying to me is a high budget was slightly reduced and the money that was, in a sense, not necessarily saved, but has come back to us, doesn't become surplus, but it's spent again on the Water Resource Center. So it doesn't go back as back into the sewer fund. That's what you're saying.
Essentially, yes, it would have gone to
Okay.
surplus otherwise.
Yeah, that's, I know it's a better scenario, it's not the best scenario, but thanks for enlightening me. Councillor Wright.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The number 2 recommendation for me is not a very clear recommendation prior to being amended. And I guess you get into real difficulty when you provide 3 options and then you provide a price to do a design on all 3 options. I guess my preference, and this is for the administration to consider, look at your options, pick the option you want, put it in the recommendation. Then I know what you want and I know what the costs are going to be. And it would make our life a whole lot easier, I think, rather than sitting here trying to pick and choose the options and have a discussion. We can have a discussion about the options, but quite frankly, we need a recommendation from the administration, and that's what we depend on them for. So,
Okay.
Thank you.
So I think Councillor Wright's just speaking to staff about try to make the recommendations and the presentations as clear to us to make our decision as informed as possible. Councillor Seegers.
Thank you. The way I read recommendation number 2, staff have actually done that. They've come back and they've said, we want to do the design of a chemical storage unit area within the WRC.
Okay.
So we actually changed that. They made the recommendation.
Okay.
So they were clear.
Okay.
Thanks.
Yeah, there's 2 different opinions on council on the presentation. That's fine. That's why we're here in a public space. Okay, let's move on then. If there's any further questions on 7.2, chemical storage. Seeing none, good discussion. Thank you, committee. I'll move to adjourn then. Councillor Seegers, Councillor Lutz, thank you. All in favor of adjournment. Thank you. Any questions? No questions. Oh, that's right. I'm so used to asking the public for opinions. But, because I like hearing it. But anyway, no, there isn't during this period. Sorry. Enjoy the day. I think planning's soon anyway. Yeah. No questions there.